There are people throughout the world that have interesting stories to tell. Stories of heroism, acts of kindness, near-death experiences, successes, and failures. You usually hear of these stories from people that live in another state or country. But what about the stories from within your own community? Everyone has a story to tell. And by everyone, we mean your neighbor, your coworker, the person behind you at church, people you interact with on a daily basis, or maybe even you.
Welcome to the DTB Podcast, presented by the Bless Your Heart Nonprofit Corporation. I'm Brennan Mathern, and I'll be your host as we speak to some of the most interesting people on Bayou Lafourche. The term living off the land is a common phrase used all over the world. In our area, though, living off the water has become a way of life since settlement in this area. The marshes and bayous have sustained local families for generations by providing transportation routes, a means of income, and most of all, food. One of the most popular foods coming from the waters is the blue crab. For years, fishermen have been pulling the blue crab from these waterways and their catch being sold all over the country. Today, we have one of those fishermen who makes his living and feeds his family off of our local waters, Borne Jr., otherwise known as T. Roy. T. Roy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me over here. I appreciate it.
We're excited because this is the first T anything that we've had. We've probably talked a lot about nicknames that we've had all over the bayou, including our exclusive phone book that has nicknames here, which is not the same anywhere else. But we're glad to finally have a T anything. So T. Roy, we appreciate you joining us, man. We welcome you in today to talk about the life of a commercial fisherman. But first, we want to know who you are. So tell us who's your mom and dad. Tell us about your family, where you're from, and where you grew up.
Well, we from Golden Meadow, and my mom and dad's Ethel born and Raw born, and I grew up right there, just north of Plaisance Dragloin. And my family, my mama and papa, grew up on the other side of the place. Well, they lived on the other side, and their mama and daddy lived in the front of them. And I still remember going by my mama and papa Nisi's house, and they didn't speak no English. Papa couldn't speak no English. And I still remember going over there, and they would just, my mama and papa Nisi would be rocking the thing and cut off a piece of tobacco off a block, and they would spit all day long. That's all they would do. And I bought my house whenever I was 18 years old from Leeville, and I moved it to Golden Meadow. And then I live a house away from where I grew up at. Put it to you that way.
Wow. You talked about buying a house at 18. How is that straight being able to provide yourself with the line of work you chose? How were you able to buy a house at 18 years old?
Well, I started working by New Orleans Shrimp Company whenever I was 10 years old, and then I would go to work. You had to be at work at 2 a.m, and then I would get off. Well, I had to go to school, so I would get off at 6 a.m, take a shower, go to school, then come back at 3 o'clock whenever we got off of school. Well, actually, it was 4, and then work till 9 o'clock at night. And then I did that till my daddy, New Orleans Shrimp Company closed down, and my daddy opened a shrimp dock in Leeville, and I did that, and then that's how I got into crabbing.
Gotcha. And I guess it's your grandparents you mentioned. Did they speak? It was only Cajun French that they spoke?
That's it. Well, I could tell you a story. One time me and Papa was oystering in the Leeville canals, and you're not supposed to, they ain't got no wild oysters with this bowl. And then the game wardens pulled up on us, and then they started telling me this and that. And Papa at the time was like 70, had to be 70 something. And he was there decoupiering the oysters for me, and I was jumping overboard and bringing them back in the pirogue. I would fill up the pirogue and bring it back to him. And he was there knocking off the shells, and then game warden pulled up, and he's there like that. So Papa started eating some potted meat. And I ain't gonna never forget this story. After he's finished eating the potted meat, the game wardens went to give him a ticket. I said, he's too old. Don't give him a ticket. I said, give me all the tickets. And I was only 18, maybe 17 at the time. I said, give me all the tickets. He took the can of Vienna sausage, the potted meat, and threw it in the bayou, in the canal. Game warden looked at him. He says, you can't do that. And then my papa looks at him like he was crazy or something. You know what I'm saying? He said, "Qui?" And I told him I couldn't speak French because they didn't let us speak French. They didn't want to teach us. I could understand it, but I can't speak it.
Right.
But he threw the can. Once he threw the can, the game warden started screaming, "I'm going to give you a ticket for that." And then my papa looks at him. I told him. And he looked at him. He said, F for you, F for you. That's all he said. He said, oyster food. Oyster go grow in there.
You know, it's interesting that you bring that up, though, because I know that was the case for a lot of times with the grandparents. For example, my mother knew how to hold conversations in French with her mother and her grandmother, my great-grandmother. But I learned French in school, and that's how I was able to understand what they were saying. Like you said, I've never been able to fluently speak it, but I could certainly understand the conversations. And that's when they started realizing we can't talk in front of the kids anymore. So that had to be part of it. Like they wanted to have conversations that, for the adults that the kids weren't listening to.
Well, in all actuality, like people my age, I'm 52 or 3, I don't know when, but people my age is the last generation that some people could speak it and some people could understand it, but most of the people my age can't do nothing. It's like it's a dying thing. It is. It's dead. Once all the older people's gone, the Cajun French on this bayou is dead. Wow. Totally dead.
So, T-Roy, you're a commercial fisherman, but for those in the listening audience who don't know, tell us what type of job that is, what it involves.
What it involves is, how they always say that about a job, dedication. But what it is you're your own boss. You don't have to punch a clock. You don't have to do nothing. The only thing you have to do is if you don't get up for work, your bills ain't being paid, you ain't putting food on the table for your family, it's not like somebody's pushing you. You got to push yourself to provide for your family and to make a better life for them.
Now, when we talk about commercial fishermen, I think a lot of people automatically think about trawlers and shrimpers, but you catch crabs. So tell us what like a typical day would be like for you on the boat.
Oh, well, this morning, I can't sleep. So this morning I woke up at 12:30 last night and then watched TV, then I left the house at 2 to go get the bait, and now you can't find the ice, so you got to go by the little ice machine and feed that thing, and everybody's waiting in lines. That's why I wake up so early, so I could get the ice to chill the crabs. And I left my house at 4, went to Leeville, load up the boat, and started running it a little bit before daylight, and came home. Then when we get back home where I sell the crabs, we gotta help them pack the crabs and everything, and usually we finish around 4 in the afternoon.
My experience catching crabs starts and finishes with running a crab line in the surf on Fouchon or Grand Isle. Now, I will say that is a lot of fun for us when we go to the beach. Just the excitement of pulling up that line and you see those crabs and you catch them in the net. But for you working on the boat using traps, I think everybody, listening has probably seen a crab trap, but I'm one of them. I don't understand how it works. So can you explain how the crab trap works? A typical crab trap.
Wow. You got your bait box, your 4 funnels, and then you got where it comes out. You just bait them, throw them over, and then it's more than that. Like the price of crabs went up, and the crabs since after the hurricane, the volume went up, and they got every Tom, Dick, and Harry that wants to get in it now. And then they didn't see the bad times since BP. Since BP, it's been bad. I'm talking about we've been struggling. And then how they say every bad thing got a good, I had to help out the commercial fishermen. The ones that didn't, well, my boat sunk, but I got it up and got it running. But it helped out the commercial fishermen. It replenished. It
Right.
overturned the bottom. That's just like after Katrina. It overturned the bottom, and it stirred up everything. That's just like the flounders. We used to catch flounders in the crab trap every day. And then since BP, no flounders, hardly no crabs. It was a hard struggle for all the crabbers, the shrimpers too, and it was hard for everybody. But then after Mother Nature stirred it up, and it's flourishing again finally.
In a given day, and I guess let's talk about now in 2022, just so we have an idea, how many crabs, what's the amount of crabs that you would say is a good day out on the water?
Over 1,000 pounds.
Wow, 1,000 pounds.
Yeah.
You mentioned when we got started, you mentioned that you started at shrimp. You started at New Orleans. You started in New Orleans. You eventually moved back here to work. How did you go from working in a shrimp shed to commercial fisherman? Tell us a story about how you switched gears and got started.
No, I started at New Orleans Shrimp Company that was in Golden Meadow.
Oh, okay.
That's where the ice used to go across the road. You're probably too young to remember
Probably
that.
So.
And the 18-wheelers would pass and wipe out that thing. They had the 300-pound blocks of ice. At 10 years old, like in between the seasons, I would have to go in there and take some tongs and stand it up and drag it all the way to the back and stack it and stack the ice. But I was always in the seafood business. Always something to do with the water and stuff like that. And that's just in your blood. A good day on the water is a bad day. You could be a millionaire in the office. And guess what? My days could be better than yours. Because I could see every Mother Nature. Like today, it lightning the whole time and poured down rain, but I was happy.
So this is what you'd want to do if you could do any other job. Is you would still pick this to do?
Yeah. If I would win the Powerball, I would still do it.
That's when you know you're doing what you love to do.
Yeah.
Do you work by yourself on the boat? Do you ever have deckhands that
My daddy used to work with me, but then he had a stroke 3 years ago, and then my boy was working in Fisherman, and then he came, and then now me and him's partnership, but he had surgery, so he's been out for the last month and a half that I've been doing it by myself.
You mentioned watching Mother Nature. A day like today that we're recording on, we had some pretty bad weather. It wasn't horrible, but we had a good bit of rain and some thunderstorms. What would the weather look like to prevent you from going out? What would it have to be doing outside to prevent you from getting out in the water?
It all depends if we making money or not. If we ain't making money, my buddy ain't going out there. If we making a little bit of money, I was in the lake in a Carolina skiff that the big skiffs was coming in. I already dropped off my daddy at the end of the East Canal on the island. That was after Katrina. Dropped him off on the island with 30 pounds of crabs. And it was so rough, I had to drop them all. And it was cold. I'm talking about it was like 35, 38 degrees. So I made them a little house right there on the island with the crab pans. And I kept on, and the skiffs was coming in. And they would see him right there at the end of the East Canal. Rob Borne, what are you doing over there? What you Roy? He said, man, he's going out there. He said he's going to be back, man. It's been an hour and a half. I kept on running all of them. I wasn't going to stop till every last one was ran. And I picked him up, and he was freezing. He was cold. Good chance I made him a little house with the crab pans.
So and going back to something you said earlier, you mentioned catching flounder in the crab traps. I imagine that you catch all sorts of things that aren't crabs in the traps. What's some of the give us some examples of other stuff that end up in the traps and some of the craziest things you've seen that you've caught.
Actually, you don't want to catch an otter. An otter, he tears up your crab cage, but when you catch one that gets in there and makes the circle, it's bad because he drowns and then he's dead. But pretty much now lately, since after this storm, they got so much marsh that's eaten up. We've been catching like black grouper. We even caught a lemon fish, not a big one, but like maybe around 14-inch lemon fish. We caught mangrove snappers, and they all alive because they're in the water. You just throw them back, and then some little seahorses if it's full of grass, your cage and stuff like that.
Speaking of Ida, did you stay for the storm or?
No, we left that the morning before because my daddy was gonna stay. And he decided not to stay, and he went with my daughter. So at 12 o'clock at night, I packed up the family, and we just started heading north.
Now, what about your vessel? Did that stay behind, and what type of shape was it in?
Nobody's going to believe this, but my boat was in the front of the house, tied up to my wharf. And then my sister lives where my mama used to live, by Plaisance, and we live just north of Plaisance, 2 lanes away. But they went on a tugboat, and then the one on the tugboat went find my sister. Oh, your brother's boat just sank. Then he goes back an hour later. He says, I don't know if I'm crazy, but your brother's boat's afloat. Then a little while later, he said he kept on watching it. I got a Carolina skiff. I don't have no plugs in my boat, no nothing. He said it went down 3 times, and later it would pop back up. Go down, pop back up. Go down, pop back up. But then it blew off all the aluminum rigging I got, and I didn't know. I came back, it was floating. So the battery, everything was in the water, but I had to redo the whole electrical system, but it's cranked up again.
But it was right side up.
It never flipped or nothing. It just kept on going down and coming back up.
What can you describe your feeling as somebody who's lived here all their life, coming and what you saw, not just the damage to homes, but especially the other boats? The bayou was littered with overturned boats.
It was sad. It was bad. The troll boats we lost. Like I said, I was in the shrimp business since 10 years old. My daddy shut down after Katrina, but I was helping him. I would go crabbing in the morning and stay and work at the shed till 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, whenever we finished. Then go crabbing again and this and that. But we lost so many troll boats, and people like crabbers. We lost so many crab cages, and a crab cage now, by the time it's said and done, it's $65 to put that in the water. So every crab cage you lose is $65. And that's why I picked up most of mine, but the year before, I was down to 100 crab cages. And some of my friends, I got 50, I got 25. You take it, just replace it whenever. And I replaced it all. Did everything I had to do. And this one I picked it up, good chance. And a lot of people, once they heard I was picking up, because I never pick up for no storms. And once they heard I was picking up, they started going, oh, yeah, I'm serious. They said, you picking up, we're going to pick up.
Well, T. Roy, you've already told us some great stories, and obviously storytelling is big on the bayou, and for good reason. We've already heard some entertaining ones. Can you give us a story or experience you haven't told us yet about your time on the bayou in the marsh? Just any good experiences that you can think of?
They all good. You know what I'm saying? Ain't no bad ones. Some are better than others. But experiences. I remember whenever I was in junior high, junior high, we had to do a project, and I was trapping in the winter time because you couldn't make no money no other kind of way. So I set out some traps on the back by Texaco by the Shell Dam, and I caught an otter. Dude, that otter was so pissed off. I tried to kill him. He was trying to eat me up. He chased me around the marsh, and I finally got him. And we had to make a project about trapping and all. And I really did pretty much. I went offshore fishing, snapper fishing in the wintertime. I did everything but crawfishing to make money. I did anything and everything but crawfishing. And, well, actually that story I told you earlier about my daddy, after it was said and done, everybody was laughing. And I ain't going to never forget that I left them on the island at the end and all the bigger boats was coming in. They said, you crazy. I said, no, we got to get it. Got to get it.
You earlier this season, we talked to Kyle Crosby with Louisiana Dread, and part of that, Kyle looks at the history of our area and the history of all South Louisiana, but he also explores sort of the darker side and the untold side and some of the folklore that we have here, everything from Rougarou to the Lutan and all kind of other stuff. So someone that's been out on the water, probably alone many times in your boat, probably either early morning at night, I'm assuming that you've seen some weird things or unexplained things at some point over the course of your career. So can you tell us any story about that? Anything that you saw that you couldn't really explain?
Well, they had a old pumping station in Leeville, and it was my daughter would come crabbing with me. She was around 3-4 years old. And then we would hear some noise all the time, and she said, Daddy, what's that? Daddy, what's that? I said, that's the Rougarou in there. And then everybody in Leeville calls that spot right there the Rougarou. Anything around there, you talk about it, that's the Rougarou.
Our producer, Ross, sent me a link to your Facebook page, and when I started scrolling on your post, my mouth immediately began watering looking at all the food that you prepare. You have posts of food in the large gatherings of your family and friends that come to eat. So want to shift gears and ask you about your cooking. And where did you learn to cook, and has that always been a passion that's kind of rode right alongside of actually catching the crabs?
Yeah, actually, well, like I said, I started at 10 working, but then from 7, me and my sister had to take care of ourselves because our mom and daddy was going to work at 3 and get off at 9. 3 in the morning and get off at 9. So we had to start cooking and fending for ourselves. And then Papa showed me a lot. Like I learned from him a good bit. And then I just tried different stuff, and pretty much everybody loves it. Everybody, like after the Hurricane Ida, I cooked every day for 30 days for 7 different families.
Wow.
For 30 days. I cooked. That everybody around the neighborhood in Rupogeville, I got a bunch of friends in Rupogeville that would come. And then every day for 30 days I cooked. For everybody, we would all just get together at night. Everybody did try to fix their house.
Yeah.
And I said, we got to have a good meal at night. I said, once you get a good meal at night and a couple of beers in you, you're good to go for the next day.
Sort of the refueling stage.
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing to cook?
Anything and everything. I try anything. And the way I do it now, I don't know how to use the internet or none of that. But I know they could Google. You ask Google to look up a recipe, and you go through and get an idea. Then you make it your own. And the best tasting one, every time I cook, everybody says that, is the more Coors Light I got, the more better it tastes.
I will say that's something we have in common. My wife goes crazy because I refuse to follow a recipe. I've gotta change something. I feel like, well, anybody can make this. I gotta change something about it to kind of make it your own. But as a crab fisherman, what's your favorite way to eat and or prepare crab?
Me, actually, I ball it most of the time. And I just sit. I really don't eat that much. I'm just fight for nothing, I guess. Because I eat in the morning whenever I wake up at 1 o'clock. But I ball it and peel it and cook for everybody else. And my pleasure is to watch everybody else enjoying it.
Yeah.
That's my pleasure.
Well, T. Roy, it's been a pleasure having you here. Is there anything else we didn't cover that you'd like to add? Any stories that you'd like to add?
Y'all know that actually from Grand Isle to Golden Meadow, they used to have 27 seafood sheds.
Wow.
Buying shrimp. And now they're down to 2. 2 and 2 ice plants. And that's from Golden Meadow. Just in Golden Meadow, they used to have 8.
Yeah.
And the commercial business ain't for everybody. Because like I said, you got to push yourself. You ain't pushing no time clock. Somebody's not making you. When you put your time clock, you know that you got to be there. This right here, you got to have in your heart and in your mind, if I don't do it, my family ain't getting it.
Right.
And I never had a alarm clock in my life. Never. And I wake up an hour, 2 hours before. But right now, I just wake up at 12:30, 1 o'clock. But the whole idea is, they got a lot of young people now that's trying to get into it. And I wish them the best. But they just hear about right now, these last 2 years, that the money we're making, they didn't hear about the last 10 years, the suffering we did. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I just hope they got the intestinal fortitude to realize that it ain't all peaches. It ain't always good. That you got a lot more bad than good, but you got to want to be able to do this the rest of your life to be able to survive. And I'm proud that my boy is choosing to follow in my footsteps.
It seems like the commercial, not necessarily at the same time or on the same wavelength, but it seems like the commercial fishing industry really mimics the oil field. In that, there's highs and lows, and you can have a career in either, but you have to be able to weather those storms.
Yeah, you gotta have a little nest egg to be able to hold up, and good friends. Like I said, year before last, I lost all my Cajun. It was bad before Ida, and then I had a bunch of friends that, I got 100 Cajuns, I got 30 Cajuns, come pick it up brand new, and I said, I'll replace it as fast, and I did. Before the end of the year, everybody had their their stuff replaced, but it's a lot of, you got to be good to everybody else for everybody to be good to you. You know what I mean? Because I would give the shirt off my back to anybody. I'm talking about anybody. People I don't even know. And I guess it's just the Cajun way. And a lot of people I know is not from down here. And they say, man, y'all get along. Y'all, I don't understand how y'all can stay in the same place for so long. Well, why leave it whenever it's the best place on earth? You know what I'm saying? Why leave? What, you crazy? You want me to go to New Orleans where all the criminals and everything happens? I know we got our stuff on the bayou, but it ain't that bad.
No.
You can walk outside your house at least.
You're right about that.
I could say one thing too.
Yeah.
Like the Louisiana, talking about coastal restoration and this and that. But how can you build back the marsh whenever it's just a certain few that could use it? Because every marsh is leased out from here to the Gulf, and you can't use it. You got to lease it out. How can you build back other people's land? I know it's for the better, but if that's the case, I want as much as they build on their land in my yard. I'm going to be 30 feet tall. I ain't got to worry about it flooding.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I think that's against the law that they could put it on private people's land, build back land for them, that only a certain amount of people could use it. That's what we got to deal with crabbing. They ain't got no place to crab no more. It's all leased out just for a certain amount of people. And Louisiana is the only state like that. We're the only state like that. Every other state, if the tide rises or falls, you could go. But Louisiana is the only state that the whole state's like that now. Somebody, you could be fishing, and that's for all the sports out there too. And they could throw you out. You can only be in the bayous or a named bay. Everything else is leased out. And they talking about coastal restoration. Build back all the islands. The state owns the islands now, except Fouchon. But as far as marsh, if you build back marsh, that's privately owned. How can you put taxpayers' money on a personal land?
With regard to commercial fishermen, just talking to some outside of the podcast, that's always been one of the biggest issues that we've heard, whether it's commercial fishermen or those that bring people out to charter fishermen.
Yeah.
That's always been their biggest concern and one of the biggest threats to the industry.
Well, to all the industry, all the livelihood of everybody in Louisiana that's commercial guide fishermen, the sport fishermen too, they get thrown out. So you know what I mean? You want the betterment of the state to bring in income for the state whenever they can't go fishing nowhere. You know what I'm saying? Bass thing came down 2 years ago right there in Lafitte. And they're not coming back, Bass Pro, with the elite tournament or whatever, because they ain't got no place to fish. But how can the federal government and state put it on private land, spend taxpayer money on private land? That's what I don't understand. Like I said, bring me my share. Fill up my yard 30, 40 feet tall. Fill up all our yards 30. We could be higher than 11, so we ain't got to have nothing to worry about.
Coastal erosion, in all of my professional career, and I'm sure even before, well before that, it's always been a hot topic, and there's always several different ways that people have different ideas, and there just never has been one great idea that has trumped all of them to it. The building back of marsh has been one idea, and that's the one that's progressed. But as far as trying to save what we have. It's almost felt like a losing battle over the years.
Well, no, they got too many people, they waste too much money in studies. Nothing gets done. Dude, take an old coon ass and tell them what's happening, and they gonna figure it out. They gonna figure something to stop it.
Cajun ingenuity.
That's what it's gonna take, because if you wasted $10 million in a study, and 3 years later you gonna do the same study, another $10 million, that's $20 million you could have put restoring. You could have made an island. They're doing it in Dubai.
Exactly. T. Roy, again, thanks so much for joining us. We like to have a little bit of fun with all of our guests before we go, so we have some rapid fire questions. Now, you can give us a short answer, or you can explain if you feel the need. It's up to you on each of these. So you ready?
Yeah.
All right. So what's your go-to order at a Down the Bayou restaurant?
Me, I like a roast beef po' boy.
Solid classic. Now, even though your grandparents didn't let you speak Cajun, do you have a favorite Cajun word or phrase and its meaning?
Valaba means go over there. Especially to the kids. They used to tell us, Valaba.
So it wasn't.
I tell my grandkids, Valaba.
So it's not a term of endearment.
No. Get out, you aggravate me.
We have not heard that term yet, so appreciate you sharing that. Favorite snowball flavor?
Ice cream with condensed milk.
Wow, okay. So next hurricane, you stay in or you evacuating?
I stayed for everyone, but this one ain't Katrina. I don't know why. This one I had a bad feeling. Like, we started picking up cages 3 days before it hit. That me and my boy was till daylight to dark trying to pick up cages and bring him in. Katrina too, that was the only two I ever left for. I don't know. I just had a bad feeling. I don't know. When you get it in your gut, you got a whole butt.
I'm going to remember that saying. I might actually use that. I'll definitely attribute it to you. Okay, I think I know where we're going to go on this last one, but I have to ask it. So this is the hot topic right now. Jambalaya or pastalaya?
Pastalaya. I cook a mean pastalaya.
All right.
Everybody says that.
Well, T. Roy, we appreciate you joining us, man. T. Roy Borne, commercial fisherman in this area. We appreciate you. Your first commercial fisherman we've had on the podcast. We've appreciated all your stories. Thanks a lot for joining us today, man.
Thank y'all for having me, and I appreciate it. And hopefully y'all out there learned something. I don't know what.
Well, that'll do it for this episode of the DTB Podcast. We want to thank our producer, Ross Jeanball, our executive producers, Jeray Gyro and Hillary Crum, and the rest of the Bless Your Heart nonprofit board members, Luke Newman and Chris Brantley. Be sure to subscribe to the DTB Podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also get more content by following us on Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok at the DTB Podcast. I'm Brennan Mathern. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.